Good afternoon. My name is Jacob Raggio, and this is going to be my presentation for my project for KNES 443. My topic assigned was the psychology of elite athletes. The first topic that I wanted to start with was confidence, the confidence of elite athletes. Now, obviously, confidence is an emotion that will come with success for elite athletes. You win a few games, you're going to build up your confidence. Now, obviously, elite athletes, they win a lot, they have a very high success rate, so they're going to have high confidence. Now, although they can have that high success rate, which gives them that high confidence, there are some things that can deter and lower their confidence, which include injuries, their age, or the goal orientation. You set a high goal for yourself, you set it something too high that you can't reach, let you up down, lower your confidence. I personally experienced my lack of confidence with injuries in my senior year of wrestling. I was wrestling in high school. I had surgery in the off season after my junior year because I torn my labrum, and I had a lot of lack of confidence. I was having the recovery took a lot longer than they thought it would for my surgery, and it threw off my confidence from my last year of wrestling. I didn't do good as I wanted to, and it messed me up. So obviously, next point I talked about low success rate, low confidence. You don't win a lot, not going to feel good about yourself. I mean, even one article that I read, it said even one mishap can throw off an athlete's confidence and get in their way of the performance. The article mentioned above was on the Olympic athletes. I read throughout it, it talked about how the athletes, even in practice, just the simplest drill that they were doing, if they did it wrong, it threw off their confidence. So that's one thing I found interesting because even me personally, I never had that. It was only in like say big competitions if I lost some that I really want to win, it threw off my confidence. But obviously I'm not an Olympic athlete. So next topic. So the next topic is anxiety. Now, anxiety is associated with feelings of uneasiness or worriedness, in normal life you're worried about a project, you got bills to pay, something like that, you can have anxiety over it. For athletes, anxiety, you can feel anxiety anywhere. I read in this article that I mentioned in the next point that it does show an increase of anxiety when they are playing at a away venue, but they'll obviously feel it if they're playing at home, playoffs, just anywhere. They might even feel anxiety in practice. It's just, if it's something that they're unknown about, they're in unknown territory, they'll feel some kind of anxiety. I mean, even one, like I said before, and I'm mentioning it again, one bad game can lower an athlete confidence, resulting them in having anxiety about whether or not they can recover. They have one bad game. In baseball, I work as the equipment manager for the UL baseball team. And one thing that happens is if a player starts messing up real bad, they can't even make the simplest throw from shortstop to first. They have what's commonly called the yips, and it can completely ruin a player's career where they just can't recover from it and they get released. Now, one possible way that I read about that they can treat anxiety and work on it is cognitive behavior therapy, uh, which the author Gustafson in the article talked about. He studied a Star Trek athlete who was having real bad anxiety, just competition and practice, just all around. So they did a study, they did cognitive behavior therapy on her, and she did report lower anxiety. I also read in that very same article that it can be used to treat other ailments such as depression and everything else. It also said like it was originally used to treat depression, but it ended up being a great way to treat anxiety. That was one thing I found that I noticed that I thought was really interesting. Now, next topic. Now, the next topic is motivation. Motivation. So why does an athlete want to put in all the time that they have to put in to become an elite athlete? Like I said, I work as equipment manager, and our head coach, Tony Robichaux, he always mentions that to be elite at something, you have to put in almost 10,000 hours of work towards that thing, towards that one thing. So obviously, seems endless, like endless amounts of hours. So why do they want it? Why are they willing to do this? So obviously, elite athletes are going to be more motivated than some guy playing rec league softball on the weekends. Obviously, an article I read, it did mention that they have significantly higher motivation levels than a recreational athlete or even an athlete that's in college. They'll have higher levels of motivation. Now, Where do they get this motivation? Motivation can come intrinsically or can come extrinsically. Now, if it's intrinsic motivation, it's someone's personal drive to achieve their goals. Something that's inside of them. What goal are they setting to achieve, to give them that motivation? What are they doing? What do they want to accomplish, and how are they going to accomplish it? Now, extrinsic motivation, that is going to come from an outside source, parents, coaches, etc. I also, again, relating this to myself, I personally had a lot of extrinsic motivation from my parents and coaches. I'm very someone who doesn't like letting people down. If someone wants me to do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to try to accomplish it as best as I can. So when I would see my parents get excited or my coach get excited about me doing well in, say, baseball, football, I even play basketball a little bit, or wrestling like I did in high school. I did football and wrestling in high school, and seeing them excited, that gave me the drive, the motivation to want to keep going. Obviously, I had my own motivation, but that just added on top of it. That's one thing that I see, I agree with, I relate to very, very well. Now, the next topic, I'm sorry, not next topic, motivation continued. I read this one study where it said most elite athletes are found to be intrinsically motivated than extrinsically motivated. Now, I do see some reasoning that, they can't just rely on other people to motivate them and push them. They got to be able to do it on their own. Then another thing that Coach Robichaux talks about is no codependency, keeping track of yourself, staying on top of everything, being motivated, everything like that. Not worrying, is someone else going to help me? Someone else going to do this, or someone else going to help me do that. You got to rely on yourself. This specific study that I am talking about dealt with, it was based on athletes that had a full academic and athletic schedule, so they were considered dual career. There were 38 athletes, so not the size, a particular study size that I would like to see. If it's only 38, how many athletes are on the world, you might want to do a little bit more. That way your study has more validity. Questionnaires, now in the study, the questionnaires were given to determine their measurements, and the study lasted 13 weeks. At the end of those 13 weeks, they looked at all the questionnaires, they wrote their measurements down, and then that's how they found that most elite college athletes are found to be intrinsically motivated, or at least more than extrinsically. Okay, now next topic. Now the next topic is competitiveness, which is very related to motivation because it's considered a form of motivation. Basically, it's a desire to win an interpersonal situation. When you're in that last second game, it's coming down to the final seconds. Do you have desire to win it? Do you have desire to pull off the upset? You're down 3-0 or something. You got to get it. You got to get a win. Why do you want to get it? How are you going to get it? Things like that. That's what's associated with competitiveness. Competitiveness is not really associated with corporate world. You're not seeing someone talk about being competitive in an office job, desk job, like someone is talking about being competitive in sports. It's not on the same levels. Now, according to a study on the article that I read called Competitiveness in Elite Professional Athletes, competitiveness remained the same in the athletes regardless where they're at professionally, whether they're in, say, minor leagues, high school, college, or all the way up professional. The very elites of the elites in the professional leagues, which I found to agree with myself. I personally agree with this because, you hear, you'll read interviews. I'm not read interviews. Watch interviews from about elite players. Elite players are talking about their competitiveness, their drive during a game, before a game, or after a game, or during a game. Interview. How are you able to stay this well? How are you this competitive and everything? And things that they say, these are actually things me and my friends would say in high school. It's not something out of the norm like, oh, I've never heard that before. I've never seen someone that competitive. I've seen people in high school be that competitive. So I think that makes total sense. I Whether or not that's fully proven, obviously, still to be seen. I didn't get to find another article that talked about that. As much as I looked, I couldn't find another one that really kind of stayed on the same exact topic to further prove the point of this study. But nevertheless, I do think that there is some truth in that. Now, next topic. So the next topic is going to be burnout. Now, burnout, I personally experienced, so that's something that I wanted to cover, which is obviously athletes becoming tired of their sport and they just don't want to play anymore. Obviously, famous tennis player Bjorn Borg, he famously quit because of burnout. He just didn't want to play anymore. I mean, he even tried to come back. I think it was about 2 years after he quit, but he just never could get it together. He never had again what he had when he was first playing right before he quit. I think even Barry Sanders famously quit from the Detroit Lions because of burnout. Again, now obviously it has been characterized by three core missions. It is physical and emotional exhaustion, it is sport devaluation, and reduced sense of accomplishment. So, first thing, you're just absolutely exhausted. You're tired of playing this sport. Your body is just giving out on you. And then you begin to hate the sport. You devalue the sport. You don't want to have anything to do with it. And overall, this will all reduce your sense of accomplishment. You feel like you're not accomplishing what you want, or you can't really accomplish anything else. So I personally experienced that with football. Now, football, I wasn't the biggest guy, I wasn't the fastest, strongest, but I had the drive pretty much up until my senior year. Our coach, I don't know what it is, but he didn't get along with me very well, and I was doing enough that I was possibly able to walk on at Louisiana College. Obviously, not the best school. It's not like I'm going to play at Alabama or anything, but I decided like I don't want to do it anymore. By the end after my last football game, I was just fed up with the sport. Basically, I wanted nothing to do with it for about a year after. Honestly, up until like the beginning of my sophomore year of college, I didn't want anything to do with football. I was just tired of the sport. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to look at it, think about it, nothing. And so burnout is something that I totally relate to, and I think it's a topic that should be discussed more, researched more, just overall looked at more. Now, next topic. This is basically gonna be my last topic. I have one more slide after this, but that correlates depression and burnout. But on this slide, I'm talking about strictly depression. Depression is basically anything that can come from, or symptoms at least, it can be anything from decreased mood, fatigue, weight loss, thoughts of suicide. There's tons of other symptoms. Now, at times, most sports can be an antidepressant for me. If I was ever sad, sports always brought my spirits up. Even wrestling. Wrestling was probably the toughest thing I've ever done in my life, but I mean, that lifted my spirits up so much. It was just one of the greatest things ever. But when you have the psychological stressors of being an elite athlete, all these expectations on you, you have all these people following your every move, what you're eating, what you're doing, you're not playing, just things like that, all that, and then the stress of sports itself has been shown to possibly bring on symptoms of depression, as I cited in the article by Frank Hotzinger, and Beckman. Now, in the same study, they were very prevalent, quite prevalent, among German elite athletes that they used in the study, which made them to want to see more research done on symptoms of depression or prevalence of depression in elite athletes, just like in the next study that I mentioned in the very next bullet point that was done on elite athletes in the UK. Again, depression symptoms were very prevalent in the elite athletes that they used in the study, that the authors concluded that more research needed to be done on the prevalence of depression in elite athletes. And they also said that there should be more ways to detect early signs of depression, which I think is a great idea. There should be something to see, okay, this athlete is just not himself or herself. Something needs to be done. They need to be looked at to see if they lean towards developing depression, clinical depression, whatever. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about depression and burnout because in the article written by Beckman, Frank, and Nixdorf, they talked about basically the exact. I mean, the title basically mentioned depression and burnout. The whole point of the study in the article was to talk about the correlation between depression and burnout. They have been shown to be similar in that one thing that links them both that makes people think how they're related so much is stress. They're both similar due to their physical and emotional symptoms, but that one thing that always everyone thinks they're related is stress. Now, it has been theorized that depression in elite athletes is an outcome of stress, mentioned in the article by Beckman, Frank, and Nixdorf, but it was never fully proven. But personally, from my experience, from what I've seen, I think there is some validity in that. Obviously, much more research will need to be done on depression, burnout, and a correlation as well before we can conclude anything such as that. Now, now that is it. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening to this presentation. Here are my references mentioned for all the research that I used in this presentation. You see all of these slides right here, all these resources that I used, which I found to be really helpful in just I got to learn a lot more on something that I was really interested in, which is the psychology of the athlete. That's something I want to learn about because my end goal in my career is to be a strength and conditioning coach for a pro sports team. Whether that's basketball, football, baseball, hockey, you name it. That's something I'm passionate about. That's something I want to do. So I was actually very glad that I got this topic. Okay, and these should be my last references. Again, thank you for your time. Have a good day.